June and July 2026. As the common cliche says, the world is coming to Toronto. Not for sightseeing, not for the TN Tower. No, they're here for the biggest sporting event on the planet, the 2026 FIFA World Cup. 7 matches, each with almost 36,000 spectators in the stands, 25,000 more attending events just outside the venue. There will be 7 chances for the city to prove itself on the global stage. 7 match days where hundreds of thousands of fans will all be trying to get to one place, BMO Field. Now, I am not much of a football fan myself, and nor am I good at playing this sport, but looking at this month-long event from a transit perspective, this event isn't just a sports tournament, it's a stress test. The city of Toronto itself has proclaimed that it is ready to deliver a safe, efficient, and world-class experience with a transit-first approach. And to be fair, for an event this scale, that is exactly the right approach. But a transit-first event does come with a simple requirement. The transit needs to work. Because moving tens of thousands of people to a waterfront stadium is not optional. It is the entire event. If the transportation fails, the event fails. And that puts all the pressure on a system that already struggles to keep up with daily demand. The TTC, Go Transit, the Up Express. On a normal weekday, platforms are crowded, trains are full, delays happen. Now imagine that, but in addition to the regular commuters, there's the entire world. So the question is not whether Toronto is ready to host the World Cup. It is whether its transit system is ready for what comes with it. First, let's establish the attractions that the fans are traveling to. The matches themselves will take place at BMO Field, or as FIFA likes to call it, Toronto Stadium. It is located on the grounds of Exhibition Place on the west side of downtown Toronto along the city's waterfront, where ticketed fans will travel to and from to watch the games in person and scream at referees.
Palmer! Here we go. Alright, place in front. Fucking hell, Ray!
At the same time, the FIFA Fan Festival operates as a second major attraction just west of BMO Field, located on the Bentway and the Fort York Historic Site. It'll serve as a large public viewing and event space where fans can gather to watch matches, celebrate more dramatically, and take part in the World Cup atmosphere. Based on the FIFA World Cup 2026 Toronto Mobility Plan, we are expecting that 70% of all attendees will rely on transit to get to and from the events. Only 7% are expected to drive, 10% will use taxis or rideshare, and 13% will walk or cycle. In real terms, that translates to roughly 25,000 stadium spectators and 17,500 FIFA Fan Festival attendees, depending on the same transit network. We should also be looking at when these people will actually travel. Arrivals are relatively spread out. Around 20% of people will arrive 3 hours before kickoff. 50% will arrive about 2 hours before, the largest spike, and the remaining 30% will show up in the final hour. After the match ends, 70% of people will try to leave within the first hour. Another 25% will leave in the second hour, and only 5% remain beyond that. Inbound traffic is spread out, outbound traffic is everyone at once. Alright, now to dive into the massive transit mobility plan that was designed to tackle thousands of fans. Around BMO Field at Exhibition Place, the network is built around a few key hubs. There's Exhibition Go station on the Go Transit network, currently serviced by the Lakeshore West Go line. Dufferin Gate Loop to be used by buses running on, Dufferin, and a temporary new Fleet Street hub, which will be a new 509/511 stop on Fleet Street between Strachan Avenue and Fort York Avenue, which will be about here. Streetcar operations at the exhibition will be restructured around this new hub. The 509 Harbourfront and the 511 Bathurst streetcar will terminate at the Fleet hub before continuing empty to Exhibition Loop. Longer temporary platforms will be installed here, just west of the existing stop at Fort York Avenue, to be able to handle larger crowds. The Exhibition Loop itself will be closed to general passenger activity, with only riders requiring the accessibility ramp on the streetcar allowed to board or light there. This closure allows the loop to be used for staging additional streetcars during pre- and post-match surges, significantly increasing capacity beyond normal service levels. In addition, the hub will also host some bus platforms that are planned contingency emergency bus shuttle to St. Andrews Station. There are also some additional entry points into the transit system. The biggest is Toronto Pearson International Airport, located in the northwest of the city. This is the primary international entry point. From here, international fans will either take the Union Pearson Express directly into downtown, or transfer onto the TTC via the 900 Airport Express bus to Line 2, or suffer on the 52 Lawrence Express buses to Line 1. Then, you have the Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport, right on the waterfront, right next to downtown. It handles shorter haul and regional flights, meaning a steady stream of fans will be arriving basically within walking distance or streetcar distance of the core, BMO Field, and the Fan Festival. On the land transit side, Union Station is the central hub. This is where the intercity trains like Via Rail, regional trains from Go Transit, the Up Express from YYZ, the Line 1 Young University Subway, the 509 Harborfront and 510 Spadina streetcars, and a plethora of intercity and local buses all converge. If you are coming in from elsewhere in Ontario or nearby cities, this is where you land. But the connection between the Union Station and the stadium is fragile. If transit options like the 509 streetcar fail or become overloaded, the plan explicitly expects people to walk 40 minutes from Union to both the stadium and the FIFA Fan Festival. On the bus side, the backbone is the 929 and 29 Duffin route, supported by new rapid-owned bus-only lines between Bloor and King. These routes will operate articulated buses at approximately 6-minute frequencies, with additional match-day express shuttles, although exact service levels were only described as enhanced. The 63 Austin bus will also be used during the World Cup, operating mostly unchanged from its normal schedule, using the standard 40-foot buses at 5 to 10-minute frequencies, with some unspecified route adjustments to accommodate road closures and what appears to be enhanced transit signal priority between Ossington Station and Dewson Street. A dedicated contingency shuttle bus will also operate between St. Andrew Station and the Fleet Hub, running express service with articulated buses at 3 to 4-minute frequencies to provide additional support during match days. The routes will likely be east on Lakeshore Boulevard, Western Fleet Hub, north on Bathurst Street, east on King Street with a stop at St. Andrew Station, and a loop via Bay, Wellington, and York. Streetcar service will be significantly increased. The 504, 509, and 511 will all operate at roughly 5-minute all-day frequencies. The 504 King will provide additional service, with riders expected to board at St. Andrew or King stations and walk south to Bathurst Street for the Fans Festival or Duffin Street for the stadium. The 504B branch will not terminate at Dufferin Gate Loop in order to preserve capacity for the 99 and 929 buses. Instead, will loop via Dufferin, Queen, and Shaw, operating clockwise during the day and counterclockwise in the evenings. In addition to these changes, King Street West seems to be receiving expanded curbside and turn restrictions between Jameson and Avenue and Bathurst Street. The 509 Harborfront will operate between Union and Fleet Hub. It is acknowledged that this route will be heavily used with likely capacity constraints and delays, and is not considered a recommended option for accessing the stadium. Existing reserved lanes along the waterfront will be used instead. Service will operate at approximately 5-minute frequencies, with enhanced stagnant signal priority being put in place between Lower Spadina Avenue and the Queens Quay Porno Portal. The 510 Spadina streetcar is assumed to operate with its regular service levels but will not terminate at Union Station Loop. Instead, it is expected to terminate at Queens Quay Loop during game days, operating similarly to how the 510B branch is shown on TDC maps. I'm assuming this was done to provide extra capacity for 509 Harborfront streetcars that the already constrained Union Station Loop. Also, it seems that it's getting enhanced transit signal priority between College Street and King Street West. Don't know why. The 511 Bathurst will operate with a new express service between Bathurst Station and Fleet Hub, supported by new rapid TO lanes at approximately 5-minute frequencies. In order to replace local service between Bathurst Station and Lakeshore Boulevard East, there will be a parallel 511B Bathurst local bus. I must also add for buses and streetcars that they will be receiving new and improved Blue Night services. There will be new Blue Night routes at the 311 Bathurst and 309 Harborfront that will operate temporarily during the World Cup, replacing their daytime counterparts at the bleak hours of night. And great service improvements on the already existing Blue Night routes in the area, which will bring a vehicle leaving Exhibition Loop every 10 minutes at night. On the regional rail side, Go Transit will operate Lakeshore West GO train service between Union and Exhibition at 15-minute frequencies with potential increases to 10-minute headways and before and after matches. However, this corridor is constrained by infrastructure and by capacity at Union Station. Passengers arriving from other GO lines will face transfers, longer walks, or limited connecting capacity. In a similar aspect, there's also the Express, designed to bring international fans from Paris Airport to downtown, which unfortunately doesn't seem to be receiving much. Just 2 extra late-night trains supporting Union at 1:15 a.m. and 1:45 a.m. The airport train will most likely remain running in the same 15 to 30-minute frequencies and the same 2 to 3 car DMUs throughout the event. On subways, which despite being the backbone of the entire system is still vaguely addressed in the official plans. The TC mainly states that Line 1 and Line 2 will operate with expanded service without much detail on how it actually translates into additional capacity during peak match surges. The TC has also confirmed that subway service, which normally ends at 1:30 a.m., will operate later on select nights to accommodate multiple World Cup-related events and other activities across the cities. While these later operating hours should help reduce pressure after evening matches, they do not necessarily solve the larger issue of daytime crowding and surge capacity during the most intense travel periods. Finally, on fares. Visitors are expected to rely on Presto, There's a proposed regional tourism transit pass pilot that will allow for unlimited travel across the TDC, GO Transit, and the Union Pearson Express for 3 to 5 day periods, subject to testing in early 2026. If implemented, this could simplify movement across the region, assuming the system itself can handle the demand. I must also note by the time that this video comes out, early 2026 will have been long gone with no testing of the pass, so expect disappointment. And to support all the corridors, the plan includes a major increase in staffing and operational support across the network. Supplementary supervisors will be deployed in stations on streets and at other key locations alongside additional standby and change-off vehicles across all modes. Stations will receive enhanced staffing, customer service personnel, and ambassadors, while transit controls will operate with expanded real-time oversight during match days. The TDC is also planning additional streetcars which operators at key junctions, extra janitorial and vehicle cleaning crews, more line mechanics, elevator overhead, subway, signal, and track crews, as well as standby streetcar support and service trucks positions throughout the system. On the emergency side, additional security personnel, paid duty Toronto Police Service officers, and EMS staff will be deployed at major locations, coordinated alongside station staff, transit control, and TDC special constables. The TDC is also introducing a new wayfinding pilot ahead of the tournament, aimed at helping visitors navigate some of the system's busiest stations. New alphanumeric identifiers will be added to station exits, transfer points, and other key areas, with exits labeled using codes like A or B. The pilot is to be launched at 6 stations: Bathurst, Dufferin, Bloor-Young, Union, St. Andrew, and King, all major transfer points for the World Cup. The system divides these stations into alphabetical zones tied to nearby streets, landmarks, and transit connections, while new yellow signage and updated TDC data will allow third-party transit apps to direct travelers directly towards specific exit. The pilot is expected to run from June to September 2026. Still, Toronto is not unfamiliar with major events or transit surges. The TDC and GO Transit have both handled large crowds before, so to understand how the World Cup might impact the system, it's worth looking at the closest comparisons the city has experienced. One of the closest comparisons Toronto has is the CNE, the good old Canadian National Exhibition. The CNE runs for roughly 2.5 weeks every August and attracts well over 1 million visitors during its run. Most attendees are people from Toronto and surrounding GTA who already understand the transit system, know where the exhibition place is, and are more familiar with the routes. The TDC usually adds non-stop express buses between Dufferin Station and the Dufferin Gates and Bathurst Station to Exhibition Loop. Extra service is also usually added on 29 and 929 Dufferin buses, 509, 5 and 511 streetcars, and the Lakeshore West GO train. Even though service increases, the network around Exhibition Place still becomes extremely crowded during major CNE days, especially during weekends, concerts, and the air show. Platforms for the love, streetcars leave packed, GO trains arrive with only standing room, and long queues regularly form outside stations and transit loops regularly after events end. Another comparison for the World Cup was the Taylor Swift Eras Tours that happens in November of 2024. Around 60,000 fans attended, each of the 6 concerts at the Rogers Centre near Union Station. Unlike the CNE, which is mostly attended by people from Toronto and the surrounding GTA, already familiar with the transit system, the Eras Tour brought a much larger international crowd. Fans traveled into the city from across Canada, the United States, and overseas, many relying heavily on hotels, airports, Union Station, the subway network, and downtown pedestrian routes. There was far more riders unfamiliar with TDC itself, navigating fare systems, transfers, station layouts for the first time. The TDC responded to this event with service increases on line 1 and 2 during concert days, routing 511 streetcars to Union Station and extra 19 bay bus trips. In addition, GO Transit also added extra late-night services on the Milton, Kitchener, Barrie, and Stouffville lines. And overall, this system handled the events very well. Crowds were definitely noticeable across the downtown core, especially around Union Station and pedestrian routes surrounding the Rogers Centre, but the TTC and GO Transit were largely able to keep people moving through a combination of additional staff and crowd control measures. Past events have shown that Toronto's transit system can handle large surges of added services and crowd management, even if stations and corridors became extremely crowded. However, these cases were still short, contained spikes with recovery time between them. The World Cup is different because this turns the same pressure into a repeated pattern over multiple events sustained across multiple weeks. With that in mind, the real question is not whether the system can move crowds, but if it starts to break down when that level of demand is repeated and layered onto existing service. That is where issues begin to emerge. First, we heavily rely on surface transit such as the 509 and 511 streetcars or the 29 and 929 Dufferin buses for main routes to the stadium. Streetcars and buses on around key corridors are fragile by design, vulnerable to blocked intersections, illegally parked vehicles, pedestrians still over, emergency detours, road closures, and even spontaneous fan marches or crowd surges. None of these are rare edge cases during a major event. They are the exact kind of conditions you expect around a stadium housing international matches. The real issue is not just the disruptions themselves, but how quickly they cascade. One delay can ripple through the entire line, throwing off schedules, spacings, and headways. Under heavy demand, this almost guarantees streetcar bunching, where vehicles may start behaving like a coordinated system and start collapsing into uneven clusters, making already packed corridors even less reliable. Grade separated transit does very little to offset the pressure on the service transit corridors. The subway system does not directly serve the stadium, with no fixed rapid transit connection until the Ontario line over there opens in the 2030s. In the meantime, the TTC has stated that additional late-night subway service will operate during the term, alongside generally enhanced service on lines 1 and 2, although details on major frequency or capacity increases remain limited. Existing subway conditions already include occasional delays, signal issues, on high crowding during peak periods, meaning the system is already being asked to absorb additional World Cup demand on top of the existing demand. On the regional side, Go Transit does provide substantial capacity in exhibition, with up to roughly 6 trains per hour between unit and exhibition, when each train capable of carrying around 2,000 passengers, theoretically allowing for about 12,000 passengers per hour in one direction. However, that capacity may still not be enough during peak surges, considering how many riders will be funneled between downtown and the stadium area. As a result, many passengers will be pushed onto service routes like the 509 Harbourfront streetcar, which the TEC itself has already acknowledged as likely to experience overcrowding and delays during the tournament. Let's not forget the people flying into Toronto for the matches. The Up Express is limited in how much additional demand it can absorb during the World Cup, with only a small number of extra late-night trains added for match days, and no major upgrades such as increased frequency, longer trains, platform expansions, or infrastructure improvements. It still operates at roughly 15-minute headways and can move about 700 passengers per hour per direction and seated capacity, which translates to about 14,000 passengers per day under a weekday operating schedule. That becomes a concern when scaled against expected World Cup demand, where around 40% of visitors may be international and a large share of them are expected to arrive through Toronto Pearson, potentially creating around 26,000 international airport-linked trips per match cycle, before even accounting for domestic arrivals or multi-city travel patterns. Airport passengers also reduce effective capacity due to luggage, slower boarding, and longer dwell times, and further limits throughput. Once the Up Express reaches capacity, overflow is pushed onto lower capacity and road-dependent alternatives like the 900 Airport Express bus to Kipling, the 52 952 Lawrence West buses to Lawrence West Station to Line 1, and taxis or rideshare, all of which were vulnerable to congestion and less consistent rail, weakening the overall transit-first strategy. Existing demand makes World Cup flow significantly more complex because it is not a clean search scenario, but rather a stacking of multiple simultaneous pressures. World Cup travel demand directly overlaps with regular commuter flows, downtown tourism activity, and other potential events at nearby venues, meaning the system is already operating under baseline stress before any match-related spikes occur. This creates multiple demand streams converging in the same key corridors, especially Union Station, the downtown core, and waterfront transit routes, all of which are already high-volume movement spaces in normal conditions. The result is not isolated peak loads, but stacked congestion, where the World Cup surges are layered on top of the existing system demand, amplifying crowding, dwell times, and transfer pressure across the entire network rather than replacing the existing usage. Lastly, you must acknowledge that there are multiple events, meaning the system is not dealing with a single peak demand scenario, but rather repeated operational stress cycles. 7 match days create 7 near identical patterns of inbound and outbound spikes, where the network is pushed to its limits in the same way multiple times over a short period. Each event loads the system with intense arrival flows, followed by concentrated post-match departures, producing the same surge demand spikes repeatedly. The key issue is not just the size of demand, but also the lack of recovery time between these events. The system does not get a meaningful chance to reset or return to normal before the next shock arrives, meaning congestion patterns, operational strain, and the crowding effects on infrastructure can accumulate over time rather than dissipating. So, to finally answer that goddamn question, is Toronto Transit ready for the World Cup? Yes. It will move the crowds. It will get people to and from BMO Field and the Fan Festival. Not cleanly, not comfortably, and definitely not without pressure building across the entire system, but it will function. Toronto's transit system is not being asked to solve a new problem, it is being asked to scale up a familiar one. The same surge patterns already show up during the CNE, major concerts, and downtown events. The difference here is repetition, scale, and intensity, not novelty. The system works because it's layered. GO Transit handles long-distance arrivals, subway carries bulk through the core, and buses and streetcars complete this final stretch into the exhibition place. No single part carries the whole load, but together they prevent total breakdown, even under repeated match day surges. Even with all the weaknesses, surface transit fragility, Union Station pressure, limited airport rail capacity, and unfamiliar riders, the network has multiple overlapping pathways to prevent total failure in any single corridor. It will not be smooth, it will not be comfortable, but it will keep the city moving. Thank you for watching.